This is Tonight with Jane Dutton. A very good evening to you. I'm Yuveka Rangappa. Jane has the night off on this Friday night. Well, South Africa has already congratulated Emmerson Mnangagwa. But tonight, the opposition is calling this a sham election. So what will Zimbabwe's new era actually look like? Well, that's my question for our panel tonight. What's yours? Tweet us on hashtag Tonight with Jane Dutton. Our phone lines will be open. We'll also head live to Harare in just a moment. But first, Shahan is here to bring us all the latest.
Thanks, Yuveka. Appreciate it. Well, Zimbabwe's ZANU-PF is celebrating its 50.8% election victory, but the opposition MDC alliance leader Nelson Chamisa is claiming his party is the actual winner. He says the country's landmark elections were rigged, riot police trying to prevent journalists from attending Chamisa's media briefing today.
Let's go. And I must say that Mr. Mnangagwa did not win the election in this country. The election in this country was won by the MDC Alliance presidential candidate, and we won that election emphatically. We have our tally, which tally we are ready to give those who want to see the tally. We have engaged ZEC, we want to give them the tallies. But of course, they didn't want even to listen to us. They actually misled our chief election agent, Mr. Komich, to say that we are going to have a verification of the statistics before we announce the results. He was kept on waiting in a room, only to be told that the results were already being announced, when they were almost a quarter way into announcing the results. Something that we do not take lightly, because in terms of the law, we are supposed to have the verification of the statistics. That verification was not done. It was done nicodemously, nocturnally, at night, behind curtains, and of course in cahoots with ZANU-PF. And we take this as a serious issue.
Police are finally making progress after scores of political killings in KwaZulu-Natal. Police Minister Bheki Cele says 6 people have been arrested. He says high-ranking officials implicated in the Morane Commission will be investigated. And he's overhauling the police's task team that's handling the cases.
The new project team has 118 new members. 118 new members, plus 8 members from the previous task team who have been retained in the new team. So it's 118 plus 8 members that were there. That's why it's a new team, because we have brought in so many new members.
The wheels are in motion yet again in Nelson Mandela Bay to remove DA Mayor Athol Trollip. Opposition parties in the Metro Council are planning another motion of no confidence against him next week. This time, the Patriotic Alliance is also part of the move. The party saved Trollip's mayorship when it sided with the DA in the last attempt to unseat him in March. The UDM says this time it will succeed.
Oh yes, we are more confident because out of 120 councillors in the Nelson Mandela Metro municipality, 61 councillors are going to sign the petition tonight. The petition, in fact, is moving already.
And Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe says Impala Platinum has not considered the impact of impending job cuts. He says the company is treating workers like numbers. 13,000 jobs will be lost over the next 2 years, and 5 of its Rustenburg shafts will be shut down.
That announcement undermines the challenge facing society of high levels of unemployment. And we cannot just ignore that reality because we just look in rand and cents and think that then workers should be relegated into being numbers. Workers are not numbers, they are human beings, they are family people who look after their families. When you take a decision to terminate employment, you need to consider it thoroughly and be convinced that there's no alternative. I think Impala has not done that.
Those are the headlines. Back to you, Yuveka. Welcome to the evening.
Thank you very much. And nice to know news does go on here.
Yeah, it does.
Right? There is stuff going on around us other than Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
But I'm worried that Thulasizwe Simelane is never going to come home.
Well, he's working so hard,
yeah,
so...
We'll check in with him just now. And of course, uncertainty in Zimbabwe. And tonight, there's no telling how long it will last. Main opposition leader Nelson Chamisa says he's on a mission to prove he's the real winner. Well, will he help make sure the vote wasn't rigged? Or is he just fanning the flames of instability? Let's head out to Harare now and my colleague Thulasizwe Simelane joining us live from there this evening. Thulas, a very good evening to you. Funny saying good evening to you, but with so much happening in Zimbabwe in less than 24 hours, how are people feeling at the moment? Are they happy with the outcome? Most people, are they happy with the outcome of this election?
Well, Yuveka, today has been a day of kind of contradictions in Harare, certainly. The day after the election results were announced, Zimbabweans woke up to the reality of President-elect Emmerson Mnangagwa, and a number of people started getting back to their daily routines. The situation is tough economically, and people can't afford really to lose time in terms of getting back to what it is that they do on a daily basis to try and eke out a living. Things such as joining long queues to try and access that bit of cash that they can access to be able to pay for their daily needs. And people who are street vendors were out and about, people who have jobs also wanting to go to work. So it seemed to be getting back to normal in that sense. But you also had that sense that not everything is normal because of the presence of police officers in riot, riot police officers in trucks, particularly in the area around the offices of the MDC, the headquarters. They were stationed there throughout much of the day. I'm not sure what the status is at the moment. So that's when you really get a sense that it may look like everything is back to normal, but things are far from normal. And then, as if we needed a reminder that things are far from normal, there was an incident involving journalists and riot police where we were standing by for a media briefing that was to be addressed by Nelson Chamisa at a local hotel, Bronte Hotel, and these riot police just pounced on us. They basically just arrived and parked their vehicle, and we didn't pay attention for a moment, and the next minute they were jumping from their vehicles with batons in hand and their shields, and basically telling us to get out, get out, get out, clear out, evai, get out. All of us, basically we were scattering from that hotel. It's an incident that really again highlighted that the situation is sort of trying to return to normal, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. And of course it is a situation that the government of Zimbabwe at the highest level has now apologized for, including an apology from the minister, Simon Kayamoyo, as well as the president, who took to Twitter to address the situation and saying it goes against the grain of everything that Zimbabwe stands for.
And Thulas, I'm sure that it also took you back to the old days. I mean, just at the start of this election, we were saying that, media access was a little easier than what it used to be under the Mugabe regime, and, saying how easy it was for you to even go into a polling station and reflect what was happening with that vote. But this incident also must have reminded you of those crackdowns by ZANU-PF at the time, even if it was just for a little while, taking you back there.
I hate to make it about me, Yuveka, but I can tell you now that, if I briefly make it about me, I suspect that of the people who were gathered there, I was one of the people who was really terrified as to what potentially could have transpired with this riot police. I mean, the police in Zimbabwe still use the same uniform that they've been wearing all along all this past few years. And so, I mean, you associate uniform with a certain past and a certain history. So when I saw those riot police with those blue helmets, you sort of know what they are about. Who can forget those visuals that were caught clandestinely by journalists of them, pouncing on people? So it was something that for me was really scary, particularly when I considered that, that hotel, there was only one entry, one exit. And when they were saying, get out, get out, get out, there was a bit of pandemonium because you don't know which direction am I supposed to go. When do they start acting and when do they start, beating us up? And so it really was scary for me. But, it came on a day after we had heard from the MDC leader, Nelson Chamisa, who's basically talking about how he doesn't accept the results, and that is the briefing where we were when all of this happened. He says he doesn't accept the results because they are fake results, according to him, the results of the presidential election. He actually says, in terms of their own parallel tally, he has got 56% of the vote, and President-elect Emmerson Mnangagwa actually has 44%. He's now saying that he will do everything in his power to, quote-unquote, defend the will of the people. Take a listen to what Nelson Chamisa said about the avenues, albeit not specified, that he is pursuing.
We won significantly. We actually have a majority vote of over 2.3 million ahead of Mnangagwa. It is actually Mnangagwa who did not reach the 2 million mark, as we will then show. Our percentage was actually 56%. By the evidence they have, their tally was almost 44%. And we are very clear that if they are challenging the veracity of our report, let's go to the tallying, let's go to the V11 forms, because these results were announced at the constituency level. And you can see that when they announce at night, they are giving you a night result. When they are announcing at night, they want to give you a darkness result, not the result that you voted for. And this is what we are telling Zimbabweans. The second one is their poorly done rigging. Mr. Mugabe was at least sophisticated, you know, as a fraudster. But this fraudster is so pedestrian, you know. The numbers that they even presented do not even add up, you know. I suppose they borrowed from my brother Mnangagwa, who said 10 plus 4 equals to 40.
And so that's how it was at that particular media briefing. A lot of those statements like those being made by Nelson Chamisa. In response, President Emmerson Mnangagwa has chosen to, strike a conciliatory tone, as he has done, over this period of the election. He actually addressed Nelson Chamisa directly at a media briefing that he hosted in the late hours of the afternoon into the early evening. He basically says Mr. Chamisa has a role to play in the current Zimbabwe as well as the unfolding future of Zimbabwe, urging him to that they should jointly address Zimbabweans and basically urge them to peace, and saying that while they may have been divided during the electoral period, basically now they are united by their aspirations and their dreams and hopes for Zimbabwe, also rejecting the claim that, the election result is rigged. He also then had to answer some questions, Yuveka, about the events that transpired on the 1st of August, on Wednesday, when we saw soldiers taking to the streets during that protest by MDC supporters. He says there was a call that was made by the Zimbabwe Republic Police. It was done in line with the laws after it became clear that the riots that were taking place in the city center had become difficult for the ZRP to handle, and therefore they called in the army. He wouldn't say whether he was briefed before the orders were given for the army to be on the streets, as well as for them to fire live ammunition. Take a listen to what President Emmerson Mnangagwa said about that incident on the 1st of August.
In terms of both our domestic and municipal law, and in terms of our constitution, the responsibility for maintaining law and order rests with our police. But our constitution allows for the police to call support from the military. That is when the situation has gone out of control. But otherwise, I can assure you that the service chiefs in the police have been advised that they have sole responsibility to keep law and order in the country.
Okay, so Thulas, after all of that and just hearing there from both the leaders of these opposing sides, do we know what Nelson Chamisa's next move is going to be? Has he outlined that?
We're none the wiser, Yuveka. All we know is that Nelson Chamisa says he will be pursuing legal and constitutional routes to basically enforce what he says is the will of the people. He says they've got ample evidence of how these results that were announced by the ZEC are actually quote-unquote fake, according to him. So we don't know what exactly that entails. He is also talking about a political program of action, which he says because he says it's needed because the vote was not the vote of Nelson Chamisa, it was the vote of the people, and therefore he is going to be connecting with the people as part of that political program of action. But President Mnangagwa saying that let's all move on from here. He's even looking forward to the period of the inauguration. Of course, about that incident, I must mention mention very quickly, critically, Uveka, he is mentioning that he's going to set up an inquiry, an independent inquiry into the events of the 1st of August that will include people from Zimbabwe and also experts from outside who will try and get to the bottom of how exactly we ended up with a situation where 6 people are dead, according to the police, and if you believe Nelson Chamisa, a 7th person has now died.
All right, thanks very much for that, Thulasizwe Simelane, from a calm but tense Harare this evening. And let's hope it stays that way, Thula, so you can get some rest. Well, coming up, what does instability in our neighbour to the north mean for us? We'll dig deep with my panel. This is Tonight with Jane Dutton. I'm Uveka Rangapal.